The pen felt heavier than it should have. Wren Calloway stood at the kitchen island in the house she had helped pay for, in the neighborhood she had chosen, holding a ballpoint pen over a document she had not expected to sign for another 40 years. Her husband, her soon-to-be former husband, had slid it across the granite counter that morning, without looking at her. Just the soft click of the paper against stone, and then his back, already turning away. "I need it done before the weekend," Harrison Beckett said. He was checking his phone. He was always checking his phone lately. Wren pressed the pen to the line. She told herself she would not cry. She had already cried in the bathroom at 3 in the morning, sitting on the tile floor with her back against the tub, hands over the small but certain curve of her belly. She had already done that part. She had promised herself that this moment would be quiet and dignified. She signed her name. The ink dried while Harrison was already reaching for his jacket. They had been married for 6 years. She had been an architect, still was, technically, working at a mid-sized firm in Vancouver, where she had made partner 2 years before. He was in finance. They had met at a mutual friend's dinner party in Gastown, where he had stood near the window with a glass of red wine and said something genuinely funny about interest rates, which she had not expected, and she had laughed, which he had not expected, and that was that. For a long time it had been good. She wanted to believe that, even now. It had been good for a long time. What Wren had not known, what she had not let herself suspect, and then had suspected and ignored, and then had found out all at once on a Tuesday evening, when she came home early with a migraine, was that her husband had been sleeping with a woman named Sabine for 14 months. Sabine Moreau, 26 years old, a consultant who had worked briefly with his firm and then, it seemed, continued to consult in a more personal capacity. Wren had found out the way people always find out. A phone left unlocked on the coffee table. She had not gone looking. She had picked it up to check the time, and the screen was already open to a message that read, "Tell me when she's gone, I'll come over." She had stood in the living room for a long time after that. The migraine was still there. Outside, a streetcar made its grinding turn onto Burrard. She did not confront him that night. She waited 4 days, until she was certain, until she had seen enough that there was nothing left to be uncertain about. Then she told him what she knew. And Harrison, who she had believed was a good man, who she had trusted with her savings and her future, and the secret hope she had carried for 3 weeks about a pregnancy test she had not yet mentioned to anyone. Harrison looked at her across their bedroom and said, carefully, that he thought perhaps they should talk to a lawyer. He did not apologize. She noticed that. He did not ask about the baby. She had not told him about the baby. Something in her had known, in that moment, to keep it close. The papers were signed on a Friday in late October. The maple outside their kitchen window had gone copper and rust red, and she had thought, absurdly, that it was too beautiful a day for this. By the following Sunday, Harrison had moved into an apartment in Yallowtown that seemed to have been ready for him with suspicious speed. By November, he was seen at a charity gala with Sabine Moreau on his arm. The photos appeared in a social column, one of those glossy weekend inserts that nobody admitted to reading and everybody read. Sabine wore a backless dress. She had the kind of beauty that photographs easily, all clean lines and confidence. Harrison was smiling. He looked, if anything, relieved. Wren saw the photos on her phone while sitting in the waiting room of her OB/GYN's office, a paper gown crinkling every time she shifted in the plastic chair. Her doctor, a brisk and practical woman named Dr. Okonkwo, came in shortly after and confirmed what Wren had already known. She was 11 weeks along, the pregnancy was healthy, and there was a second heartbeat. Wren blinked. A second heartbeat. "Twins, doctor," Okonkwo said, with the mild satisfaction of someone delivering unusual news she finds genuinely interesting. Wren sat with that for a moment. She thought about Harrison in his new apartment in Yallowtown. She thought about the photo of Sabine in the backless dress. "All right," she said finally. "All right, Dr. Okonkwo repeated. "Yes." Wren folded her hands in her lap. "All right." She did not tell Harrison about the twins. This was not a decision she made dramatically, with cold calculation and clenched fists. It was quieter than that. She called her sister Marguerite in Ottawa, who swore loudly and at length, and then said, "You are not going through this alone. I'm booking a flight." She called her own lawyer, not the one Harrison had suggested. but a woman named Andrea Fitch, who had been recommended by a colleague, and who turned out to have a reputation for being exceptionally good at protecting what her clients were owed. Andrea Fitch, it turned out, had a great deal to say about what Wren was owed. He signed without ever asking whether you might be pregnant. Andrea said, at their first meeting, over takeout Thai food in her Kitsilano office at 7 in the evening, because that was the only time Wren could meet without the rest of the firm, noticing her composure was held together with effort. That changes things. He didn't know. You didn't tell him. I did not. Andrea looked at her with something that was not quite admiration, but was in that direction. You kept working through all of this. I kept working through all of this. There was a short pause. Okay, Andrea said. Here's what we're going to do. What they did was methodical. Wren did not rush. She was still at the firm, still drawing plans, still showing up to client meetings with her hair pulled back, and her posture correct and her voice even, while her body quietly and persistently went about the work of building two people. She did not announce the pregnancy. She wore loose blazers. She worked. Harrison, meanwhile, moved through his new life with speed that suggested he had already been halfway out of the old one for longer than he had admitted. By December, Sabine had been photographed in what appeared to be Harrison's Whistler property. By January, he and Sabine were engaged. The announcement appeared on social media. Someone from the old friend group texted Wren a screenshot, then a string of apology emojis. Wren thanked her and set her phone face down on the desk, and went back to her blueprints. She met Thomas the way people meet people, when they are not looking to meet anyone. By accident, in a moment where she was too tired to be guarded. It was February. She was 7 months pregnant, visibly and unmistakably so, and she had misjudged the ice on the steps of the parking garage near her office, and had gone down hard on her left side, catching herself on one hand and one knee before she could fall completely. She had sat there for a moment, heart hammering, checking the parts of herself that needed checking, when she heard footsteps and a voice say, "Hey, hey, are you all right?" Thomas Ossie crouched down beside her without hesitation. He was about her age, maybe a year or two older, wearing a work jacket with a construction company logo on the chest. He had the kind of face that registers concern without dramatizing it, and he was already looking at her hands, checking for blood, checking the angle of her fall, before she had a chance to say anything. "I'm okay," she said. "I just slipped." "Did you hit your head?" "No, you sure? You went down pretty fast. I'm an architect. I'm good at assessing structural damage." He looked at her for a moment, then something in his face shifted toward amusement, even as the concern stayed. "You want me to call someone?" "No." She accepted his hand and got carefully to her feet. Her knee would bruise. Everything else seemed intact. "Thank you." He waited until she was standing steadily before he straightened up. He did not offer unsolicited advice about what she should and should not be doing, at 7 months pregnant on icy pavement. She appreciated that more than she could have articulated. "Thomas Ossie," he said, and offered his hand properly this time. "Wren Calloway. You work in that building?" He nodded toward her office tower. "5th floor. We're doing the seismic upgrade on the parquet door. I'm the site supervisor." He picked up the bag she'd dropped, checked nothing had spilled. "You sure you don't want me to walk you in?" She almost said no. She had been saying no to things all winter. "Sure," she said instead. He brought her coffee from the cart on Howe Street the next morning. He did not make a thing of it. He just appeared at the lobby door she used and handed over a cup and said, "Flat white, I guessed." And she said, "Decaf." And he looked briefly mortified and she said, "I'm joking, it's fine, thank you." And that was, more or less, how it started. Thomas Ossie was not wealthy. He ran a small construction and renovation company with 2 other partners. Good work, steady work, but not the kind of life that appeared in charity columns. He drove a sensible truck. He ate lunch from a Tupperware container that he heated in a microwave on his job site. He had a daughter from a previous relationship, a 7-year-old named Bia, who he had every other week with the kind of competent involvement that spoke of a man who had decided early on that fatherhood was not a burden to minimize but a fact to show up for. He did not ask Wren about the father of her babies. She told him anyway, one evening in March when they had started, without quite deciding to, having dinner together once a week. She told him the whole thing, plainly, without dressing it up. He listened. He did not perform outrage on her behalf. He did not offer the kind of commentary that was really just a performance of solidarity. "And you're doing all right?" he asked. "I'm doing fine. You're doing better than fine," he said, "but I didn't want to assume." She had to look away for a moment, because no one had said anything that simple and true to her in what felt like a very long time. The twins were born in April, on a Thursday, during a rainstorm that hit the coast with unusual persistence even by Vancouver standards. Marguerite had been in town for 3 weeks by that point, sleeping on Wren's couch and fielding calls, and making sure the hospital bag was always by the door. Thomas drove them to the hospital when the time came because Marguerite did not have a car, and neither at that point was Wren in any condition to be discussing transportation. He stayed in the waiting room. He had not been asked to. He just did not leave. At 11:42 in the evening, Wren gave birth to a son, and at 11:58 to a daughter. She lay in the bed afterward with one baby on each side of her and felt something settle in her chest that had been loose and frightened for 6 months. She felt, for the first time since October, like herself. Marguerite cried. Wren did not, which struck her as funny because she had been crying in bathrooms since October, and now, in the moment that perhaps warranted it most, she was dry-eyed and calm and strangely, stubbornly fine. She named the boy Fletcher. She named the girl June. Thomas appeared in the doorway of her room at some point past 1 in the morning, holding a terrible cup of hospital coffee and looking like a man who had been waiting a long time and was trying to look like he had not. Marguerite let him in. He looked at the babies for a long time without saying anything. "They're good?" he finally asked. "They're good," Wren said. He nodded. He sat down in the chair in the corner. He did not leave until morning. Harrison found out about the twins through a mutual acquaintance. It was May, and Wren had gone back to work part-time, and her name was in an industry announcement about a new waterfront project she had been asked to lead, which included a professional photo in which she looked exactly like what she was. A woman in her late 30s who had had twins 6 weeks ago and was back at her desk and would not be apologizing for any of it. Harrison's lawyer called Andrea Fitch the following Monday. He wanted to discuss the children. Andrea relayed this to Wren over the phone while Wren was nursing June with one hand and reviewing a site plan with the other. "He wants to discuss the children," Wren repeated. "He is raising the possibility of a custody arrangement." There was a brief silence during which June made a small, satisfied sound. "He has never met them," Wren said. "I am aware. He did not know they existed, or chose not to inquire until last week, also aware, and he is now suggesting." "He is raising the possibility," Andrea said again carefully, "which we will address with documentation, with timeline, and with the full weight of the decisions he made last October. He signed paperwork in which you disclosed your pregnancy status as unknown. The court will want to understand what inquiries he made before signing. He made none. That," Andrea said, "is going to matter." What followed was not fast and it was not easy. And anyone who has been through family court in this country will tell you that the system moves at its own pace regardless of how clearly one party is in the right. Wren had known this going in. She had prepared for it, with Andrea's help, and with the particular discipline of a woman who had learned, over the past year, that preparation was the only thing she could fully control. She had documentation. She had the timeline. The date of the signed agreement, the date the pregnancy was confirmed, the 14 weeks between them during which Harrison had made no inquiries, and made 3 trips with Sabine and announced an engagement. She had her medical records. She had Marguerite, who had been present for every appointment. She had Thomas, who had been present for the birth. Harrison's lawyer argued that he had been denied the opportunity to know his children. This was not entirely untrue, and Wren's lawyer did not pretend otherwise. What Andrea argued, methodically, with documents, was that the opportunity had been refused by Harrison's own choices. That a man who signed away a marriage in October without once asking whether his wife might be pregnant, who had moved in with his affair partner within weeks, who had made no attempt at contact in the months that followed, could not now claim an urgent investment in paternity. The judge was a deliberate woman who asked careful questions and wrote things down. The process took 4 months. By September, Thomas had met Fletcher and June approximately 47 times. Wren had not counted. She knew the number because Marguerite had made a joke about it. teasing the way sisters do when they were trying to say something true through the side door. Thomas did not perform his involvement. He did not announce it. He showed up on Thursdays, because Thursday was the day Wren's part-time childcare ended at 3, and her afternoon meetings sometimes ran until 5, and he had simply started being available on Thursdays. He showed up at the park near her building on weekends, with Bea, who had decided that Fletcher was interesting, and June was very small, and that the whole situation was acceptable. He fixed the hinge on Wren's balcony door, which had been sticking since July, without being asked and without making it into anything. He said, one evening in September, after Wren had put the twins down, and they were both sitting on the balcony in the cooling dark. "I want to be useful to you, not in a way that makes you feel managed. I want you to know that I'm here and I mean to stay here if you'll have that." Wren looked at the city below for a moment. Vancouver at night, the lights on the water, the faint sound of a train somewhere south. "You should know," she said, "that I am not an easy person right now. I am still in the middle of a legal proceeding. I have 2 infants. I work full-time. I am managing a lot. I know. I am not looking for someone to rescue me. I'm not trying to rescue you," Thomas said. "I'm just trying to be around." She looked at him then. He looked back. He had the steadiness, she had noticed, of someone who had figured out that most things don't require a dramatic response, and that presence, just being there, just staying, was often the most useful thing a person could offer. "Okay," she said. "Okay?" "Yes." She reached over and put her hand over his on the armrest. "Okay." The court ruling came in October, almost exactly 1 year after she had signed her name to the papers at the kitchen island. The judge found in favor of a limited, structured arrangement, acknowledging Harrison's biological connection, while noting at length his absence during the pregnancy and in the months following the birth. The arrangement required Harrison to demonstrate consistency of involvement over a period of time before any expansion of contact would be considered. He was assigned specific supervised visiting hours, not the joint custody schedule his lawyer had sought. He was also ordered to contribute financial support at a level that reflected his income, which was substantial, and which Andrea had documented with considerable care. Wren read the ruling in Andrea's office on a gray Tuesday morning, with a takeout coffee she hadn't touched. When she got to the final page, she was quiet for a long time. "Are you all right?" Andrea asked. Wren thought about the question honestly. She thought about October and the pen, and the way Harrison had not looked at her when he slid the papers across the counter. She thought about the parking garage in February and the ice and a man in a work jacket who had crouched down next to her without hesitating. She thought about June's face the first time she had really focused, and the specific sound Fletcher made when he was hungry, and Bea at the park deciding the twins were acceptable. She thought about a balcony in September, and the city lights and the word "okay," spoken twice, meaning something different both times. "Yes," she said, "I think I actually am." Harrison Beckett visited his children for the first time on a Saturday in November. He arrived at the agreed location, a neutral family center in East Vancouver, with Sabine, who was no longer his fiancée. They had, Marguerite reported with a brevity that suggested she was enjoying the restraint, ended things in August. He arrived on time. He was polite to the supervising worker. He looked at Fletcher and June with an expression Wren had not expected. Not entitlement, not the performance of remorse, but something genuinely surprised, as if he had not until that moment understood what he had signed away. Wren did not witness this. She did not need to. She was at the firm in a meeting about the waterfront project, going over the structural details of a building that had not yet been built and already had a shape she believed in. Thomas picked the twins up from the center afterward. He texted her when they were back. "All good. Bea is teaching June to wave. It's not going well, but she's committed." Wren read the text in the elevator on her way back to her desk, and she laughed. A real laugh, the kind that arrived without announcement. And a colleague glanced over and she said, "Sorry, nothing. Good news," and stepped out onto the 5th floor and went back to building things.